What's going on, guys? My name is Tommy. Welcome back to the channel. It's time for another episode of Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit here in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. You guys have been on my butt asking me to re-up all of the stuff from the playtest into 2nd Edition. Today, by very popular request, we're taking the very first video we did and we're rolling it through again in 2nd Edition. It's time for Gishing 201. If you're liking what you're seeing, remember to like, subscribe, and ding that bell. Today, this episode of Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit was brought to you in part by Nick Cirillo. Thanks for your help, man. And hey, remember guys, patronage at any tier gets you access to a Google Sheet that this character is built on, gets you access to a bunch of other sweet patron rewards, and also an art raffle. Who doesn't want character art, right? Exactly. And if you subscribe to the channel, you get this video early. You probably would have got it again about, I'll say 16 hours early. And it really helps a lot, guys. Anyway, enough about that. Let's hit it. Okay, we talked about this last time, I'm sure. I think we've talked about this like 25 times. Gonna do it one more. Gish, originally defined in Dungeons & Dragons, means a warrior-mage hybrid, generally using magic powers to enhance his or her abilities in melee. It's originally from the Githyanki word Gish, which means skilled. Classically speaking, in old-school D&D, we were looking at fighter-wizard hybrids. Eventually, we had things like the Duskblade, the Magus of Pathfinder. And here in 2nd Edition, there's about a billion different ways to put a Gish together. Since archetypes are so much different now, you can really just flavor this one to taste. If you want some fighter, grab some fighter. You want some barbarian, grab some barbarian. The same is true with cleric, druid, sorcerer, wizard, so on and so forth. Does this mean we will just never see a Magus class? Well, frankly, I'm not super sure. I know during the playtest I said we probably wouldn't see an oracle because we can just make divine sorcerers, but we saw how wrong I was about that. And I'm not quite there with the Magus either, but let's talk about our build, shall we? This will be the last episode of Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit put together that does not include the Lost Omens character guide. So for today's Ancestry, we will be playing a gnome. Yeah, I know, right? The Gish is a class, is an archetype, is a play style that is very multiple ability dependent. Not only are we going to want an above average casting stat, we also want a pretty good strength score, and we want to be able to take a couple of punches to the chest before we drop. The gnome's ability boosts to Constitution and Charisma, in addition to the 8 hit points, help a lot with that. We'll want to buy off our ability flaw to strength, though really, our charisma should probably be our highest stat here, as that's what we're wanting to hit with most of the time. For our heritage, we will choose the Fey-touched gnome, and grab a cantrip from the primal spell list. That cantrip is entirely your decision as to what. Since innate spells are in fact keyed off charisma, it's real good for us. Oh, do you know what we're playing yet? Have you figured that out? Yeah, we're playing a sorcerer. I like the sorcerer for this build partially because there's some stuff from various bloodlines that will help us do what we want to do. And truthfully, the bloodline was a pretty difficult call this go around. In addition, signature spells from the sorcerer. That is to say, for each spell level you have access to, choose one spell of that level to be a signature spell. You don't need to learn heightened versions of signature spells separately. Instead, you can heighten them freely. If you've learned a signature spell at a higher level than its minimum, you can also cast the lower variants. It's pretty good for us because as a Gish, a lot of times in combat, we'll be casting the same couple of spells over and over again. We have the ability to be versatile, and versatility is always going to be great. But also sometimes you just want to run up and tag somebody and cast harm on them. And yeah, yet again, we're choosing a sorcerer bloodline that is divine in nature, and partially that's because harm can be cast for one action. And I'm just going to kick it out there now. Oh boy. If the cleric archetype gave you that divine font, that cleric feat that lets you throw d10s at people looks real good. However, I will stay with the sorcerer in order to get sweet, sweet access to those bloodline powers, and today we are choosing the undead bloodline. Sorcerers look really cool because of the blood magic ability, which says whenever you cast a bloodline spell using focus points or a granted spell from your bloodline using a spell slot, you gain a blood magic effect. If the blood magic offers a choice, it's made before the spell resolves. The undead bloodline's blood magic says that necromantic energy flows through you or one target. Either you gain temporary hit points equal to the spell's level for a round, or a target takes 1 negative damage per spell level. If the spell already deals initial negative damage, combine this with the spell's initial damage before determining things. And what are our granted spells? Well, Harm and Vampiric Exsanguination. Again, Harm is going to be our bread and butter in combat. Vampiric Exsanguination looks real good when we need to heal ourselves. This will let us heal even more. Now, one thing that might be a little tricky here that we might need an official ruling on this early in the game is that you cannot have temporary hit points from several sources. Vampiric Exsanguination gives you temporary hit points equal to half the damage dealt by the spell. I'm not sure if the blood magic is a rider on that effect or its own separate trigger. Right now, it's probably a work with your GM thing. Just wanted to throw that in there really quickly. Harm, again, it's our bread and butter. Unless you're fighting a bunch of undead, then like have heal in your repertoire, or your GM is mean, one or the other. Harm lets you channel negative energy to harm the living or heal the undead. If the target is living, you deal 1d8 negative damage to it, and it gets a basic fortitude save. Willing undead get healed by this. For 1 action, you touch. For 2 actions, it's a range of 30 feet. Or for 3 actions, you can just fire off. 1 action means we have time to stride, means we have time to raise a shield. Oh yeah, once again, by the way, that is our weapon of choice again, is going to be a shield bash. The Ring of Protection is still real good, just a little bigger now. Most of our damage will be coming from the heightened version of Harm, or, again, other fancy spells that we have. Now, let's hit those class feats. Note that the Sorcerer does not receive a class feat at first level. We'll be waiting till second to grab it, but first up it will be Dangerous Sorcery. Whenever you cast a spell from your spell slots, if the spell deals damage and does not have a duration, you gain a status bonus to that spell's damage equal to the spell's level. Easy enough, right? Want hurt people with spells? Want do more damage with spells? There it is. At level 4, we will grab Divine Evolution. This gives us an additional spell slot of our highest level, which can be used only to cast our choice of heal or harm. We can cast either of those spells using that spell slot, even if they're not in the repertoire. So if you've made it all the way to level 4 and you haven't picked up heal, there's 1 heal. But this is basically just a rich get richer kind of feat. Grab this one, have 1 extra at highest level of a 1 action, tag somebody, make them tingle a little bit. Advanced Bloodline will come next. That gives us the Advanced Bloodline spell associated with our bloodline, and our focus points go up. Yeah, let's talk about those powers now, shall we? Touch of Undeath is the first one, Drain Life is the advanced one, Grasping Grave is the third one. Man, I keep doing spooky stuff for videos, and I'm really not intending to do it, but 'tis the season. Touch of Undeath. For 1 action. Targets 1 living creature. For the duration, harm spells treat the creature as undead, and heal spells treat the creature as living. In addition, harm spells gain a +2 status bonus to the hit points restored to the target. If the target wishes to avoid the spell, it can attempt a will save to reduce the effects, in case you're trying to oopsie somebody into being undead before their cleric gets to them. This has a lot of utility in the party, especially for us. If for 1 action we'd like to pretend to be a zombie before we harm ourselves and hurt ourselves real bad for a 2nd action, and then raise the shield for a 3rd, or Nova out, cast a 2nd harm, and grab somebody else. I have definitely seen worse bloodline powers in my day. Drain Life is the big one though. That's the one we're liking. For 1 action, that's huge for us. Targeting 1 creature at a basic fortitude out to 30 feet, you close your hand and pull life energy from another creature into yourself. This deals 3d4 negative damage. The target must attempt a basic fort save. You gain temp HP equal to the damage the target takes after the save and applying your blood magic. So that clearly works there. You clearly get the bigger buff there. Maybe not Exsanguination. I'm not sure where the writer is. Paizo, help, are you watching? Answer us, we need answers. If the target's hit points were lower than the damage dealt, you gain those hit points. Heightening this, and remember that powers are auto-heightened, sends it up by a d4. We're not a dwarf fighter or a dwarf barbarian. We're 8 racial hit points into 6 class hit points. We don't have a lot, and we are expecting people to punch us sometimes. My first rule as a Gish, in my time as playing them, is that I want to be as swingy as possible. Embrace the lower hit points, but have means to survive the fight. temporary HP will certainly get you there. Grasping Grave, we will get for 2 actions, says that hundreds of skeletal arms reach out and grab people. They deal 66 slashing damage. Each creature in the area must save. Sometimes they get slowed down, sometimes they can't move. Really, we're just grabbing this one for the 3rd focus point so we can spam our other stuff. As a sorcerer, all we gotta do is spend 10 minutes catching our breath after a combat, but I don't want to sit here and tell you you're always going to have that 10 minutes. Sometimes that 3rd focus point might just be necessary. Anyway, now that we've talked about all those shenanigans, Enhanced Familiar will be our next feat at level 8. You guys have heard me talk so much about how useful, versatile, and powerful a familiar can be. Please believe our first gnome ancestry feat is the one that grabs a familiar, but we'll talk more about that in a sec. This will allow us to select 4 familiar or master abilities each day instead of 2. Greater Bloodline comes down at 10, up in that focus pool. Then Bloodline Focus, which says that if you've spent at least 2 focus points since the last time you refocused, you get 2 back instead of 1, because we want to be able to just drain as many people as possible. It's almost worth not carrying the shield. I don't want to say that, because then somebody's going to get crit in the jaw and get killed. But like when the shield is broken and we're spamming our stuff more, yeah, no, we're going to need the focus points. At level 14, we'll track back and grab Quickened Casting for that once per day if your next action is to cast a sorcerer spell that is at least 2 levels lower than the highest sorcerer spell you can cast. Reduce its action economy by 1 to a minimum of 1 action, because a lot of our spells do in fact cost 2. Sometimes we're going to want a Vampiric Exsanguination for 1. Sometimes we're just going to need to nuke the board. Then being able to stride or raise a shield after, always going to be key. Greater Vital Evolution is next, which says that twice per day you can cast a spell after you've run out of spell slots of the appropriate spell level. The 2 spells you cast with this must be of different spell levels. Again, it's just more spell slots. There are a lot of things that we get access to as a divine sorcerer that allow us to nova or use all of our resources early and often without it hurting quite as bad. This essentially says you have 6 spells of the highest spell level you can cast, assuming you're casting harm, which you very well could be. More resources, more damage, more fun. It's a win-win. Bloodline Wellspring will allow us to get all of our focus points back, assuming we use them all in one encounter, or at least since the last time you focused. I shouldn't say that. You may not be able to have that 10 minutes every go. Oh, it would be sweet if you did though. Then lastly, Bloodline Perfection for an additional 10th level spell slot, because sometimes we're just gonna need to cast Miracle more than once in a day. Just you, Divine Sorcerer. Oh, Undead One. Maybe be careful where you point that thing. Anywho, moving on. The skill feats, of course, are entirely up to you. Before we go too hard into the Ancestry feats, though, I'm gonna bring it up here, because it's still happening, but I want to address, again, the Mastodon in the room. It's really weird that my cat's not screaming at me when I say large animal in the room. What I mean by that is, Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit is a video series that's meant to make the best character possible mechanically. Right now, there aren't a whole heck of a lot of Ancestry feats, and there's been more than one person approach me and say, hey, stop being adopted by halflings. It does not make sense narratively for this to always happen. I concur. However, we're here to make the best character possible, and actually, you know, on that note, that's a min-maxing for fun and profit in and of itself. Let me run this video, let me remake the Holy Horse Archer, then I will make a video on why being adopted by halflings is so good, because the ability to tip the D20 is just one of the most powerful things in TTRPGs, bar none. That said, this particular build does take halfling luck, guiding luck, but they take them as the last 2 ancestry feats. There are some other ones we take first. Talk about those real quick, because we haven't talked about them on the channel, well, since the playtest. First and foremost, again, Animal Accomplice, which grabs you that familiar that, again, I think is so powerful. If there weren't some better options for dwarves in terms of raw hit points, I feel like most of the characters we've made so far in 2nd edition would have been gnomes adopted by halflings or vice versa, because grabbing something that is smart, can go places you cannot, and probably has different move speeds than you. Again, it's just really versatile and powerful. We'll take Burrow Elocutionist next, which lets us ask questions of, receive answers from, and use diplomacy with any animal that has a burrow speed. Then Animal Elocutionist will up that to all of the animals in the animal kingdom, and we get a +1 circumstance bonus to make an impression with animals. Oh, by the way, we're charisma based. We are taking these before Halfling Luck and Guiding Luck because I believe that these will see more use in the early game than they will in the end game. Maybe by 20th level, it's still relevant for your party to go out and speak with moles and things. I think I would see this happen in the early game more than in the late game, as much as I like it. Whereas the ability to re-roll will probably come up, I don't know, every time we're in an encounter. For our general feats, it's Shield Block first, Canny Acumen for our Fortitude, Adopted Ancestry so we can be adopted by halflings, then Toughness and Die Hard. Yes, I know, those are the same as they've been. That's because they're good is why. I fully believe that the more Pathfinder 2nd Edition material comes out, the more those will change. For now though, that's just what we got. Now let's look at some spells. Harm, of course, obviously going to be our bread and butter, especially in low-level play and combat. Slap them for a d8, then if you're feeling lucky, slap them for a d8 again by casting it twice at 1 action each, then raise your shield, or if you're out of spells, hit them with a shield bash, then raise that thing, or stride, or whatever it is you need to do. But of course, we do get some other shinier things in the Divine Spell list as we level. We also have access to our fair share of control spells, like for example, the 6th level spell Blade Barrier, which forms a wall of blades 20 feet high, 120 feet long, and 2 inches thick that provides cover. It deals 7d8 force damage to each creature that's in the wall's space when it's created, that attempts to pass through it, or that ends its turn inside the wall, with a basic reflex to reduce the damage. A creature that succeeds at this save when the wall is created is pushed to the nearest open space on the side of its choice. Creatures that critically fail can't move through the wall. It's like a baby wall of thorns, basically, is what it is. If they want to get to you, they're going to have to take a lot of damage first, which makes your job and everyone else's in combat that much easier. Not going to touch on them too much, but of course we get things like Massacre, Overwhelming Presence, spells like Revival, Raise Dead. But in short, this build wants to keep itself healed, keep swinging, keep bashing. Though it may not have as many hit points as the Barbarian or the Fighter, the GM may never know that because you're constantly just putting yourself back together. And that, my friends, is Gishing 201. What do you think? What divine spells are we casting in combat? Have we played something like this? Throw it in the comments. We did a Liberator Paladin on horseback a long time ago. Gonna do one more. Gonna do it again. Gonna take a look at that Holy Horse Archer. But when though? Yeah, you know. Next Saturday. See you then.